Okay, good morning, all the students.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Let us now start the third module. So far, we have covered various kinds of pre-processing techniques and what are the requirements for data analysis task and what are the steps in data developing a data analytical model and what are the job profiles involved with data analysis and area of data science. And also, we have seen like what are the critical components of MapReduce, what are the critical components of Hadoop in terms of HDFS and MapReduce. Right. In today's class, we are going to once again cover on the importance of data and how data storage and analysis have changed over the years and comparison with other systems. Hadoop's comparison with other systems like RDBMS, grid computing, volunteer computing, how this Hadoop is trying to overcome the drawbacks that are posed by RDBMS and other traditional types of computing. Okay, so let's start with this third module. As an introduction to this chapter, let's just see what are the data sources that are available and how we are trying to tackle that large amounts of data. Okay, so we live in the data age, right? This is a statement that can be made in the with the advent of this importance of data science, right? We live in the data age. Whatever transaction we perform, whatever work we do, whatever task we perform, we are trying to generate some data. We are responsible for generating some data, right? So we live in the data age. Everything is now being recorded. Whatever work we do is being recorded, and it is being recorded in the form of data that can be analyzed in order to study about a person's behavior in depth, right? So what are the large number of data sources that we can see nowadays? The New York Stock Exchange generates about 1 terabyte of new trade data per day, right? You see the volume of data, not gigabytes. It is terabytes of data, 1 terabyte of new trade data per day. Lots of transaction take place, right? In the stock exchanges, buying of the stocks, selling of the stocks. This will generate nearly 1 terabyte of trade data per day. And even Facebook posts approximately 10 billion photos, taking up 1 petabyte of storage, right? You go for an event, you post the photos in Facebook. You go to a location, you go to a trip, or you go on a vacation, you keep posting photos on Facebook, right? So Facebook posts themselves amount up to 10 billion photos. The count reaches 10 billion photos, taking up petabyte of storage, 1 petabyte of storage. And even there is another website called as ancestry.com, where that site is a genealogy site which stores 2.5 petabytes of data. There actually they try to build the family tree of a family. So if we register with that website, they try to construct our family tree right from 3-4 generations back into time. Okay, so we can understand who were our ancestors. So where exactly our family tree started, as far as we can know back into time. Okay, so the family tree can be built and we can know about our ancestors. using this by registering with this ancestry.com. And there is another source of data like Internet Archive. Internet archives means the archives that are stored on the internet. They take around 2.5 petabytes of data and growing at a rate of 20 terabytes per month. You see 1 terabyte per day and 20 terabytes per month. See the volume of data that is being added to already existing volumes of data, right? We are actually feeling it more difficult to manage the existing volumes of data, but still at a very large speed, new volumes of data is being generated and being added to existing volumes of data. Right, even the Large Hadron Collider near Geneva, set up by CERN. I already have given an example of this system which has been set up underground in order to study how the universe have evolved from the Big Bang theory. Okay, so this is set up by European Center for Nuclear Research near Geneva in Switzerland, which will produce 15 petabytes of data per year. Why? Because it is trying to understand the Big Bang theory, how collision of photons or neutrons, how it has evolved into this universe, how that mechanism has evolved into this universe. That is being studied by this Large Hadron Collider, and it is generating 15 petabytes of data per year. That is very large volume of data that is being generated, right? So what we are doing is we are generating like carbon footprint, we are also generating data footprint. After taking so many photos, when your phone memory is filled up, then you will understand. You will feel it very hectic to store that data. You need to have some secondary devices where you want to store that data. So you're generating data footprint here. Data generated by machines is much greater than that generated by people. Yes, people are generating data. You go to some place, you go to some occasion, take photos and store them in hard drives, and after some days, even your hard drives will be full. Then you may have to go for second hard drive, third hard drive. You're increasing the data footprint. In the same way, even machines, RFID readers, sensor networks, all these are generating large volumes of data. So when you take automated manufacturing units, in that every component will take some readings in order to monitor the manufacturing process of a product. Right? In such cases, machines will generate logs of data which can be analyzed to see whether that particular component is working without any fault, without any faulty action. Right? So machines generate large volumes of data, and even RFID readers. So these RFID readers will be normally installed near toll gates. See, nowadays they say that FASTag is compulsory in order to cross the toll gate. So that in an automated way, that FASTag will be recognized by these RFID readers, and immediately that appropriate corresponding money will be deducted from your wallets that is associated with that FASTag. Right? For that, RFID readers will recognize even near communities, gated communities, near the gate, in order to, or when you enter a mall, near the parking, that gate will be lifted only by reading your nameplate by using this number plate by using this RFID readers, and immediately a ticket will be generated for you to keep track of the time you have parked your vehicle in the parking lot. Right? For all these applications, RFID readers will be useful. And these again generate lots of data. And you might have seen in movies when they want to do some investigation near the toll, they take all these RFID readers, data also to keep track of what vehicle have moved across the toll gate, and at what time it has moved, or with what speed it approached the toll gate. All this information can be taken from this RFID readers, and even sensor networks. You deploy sensors at various locations to read the geographical or climatic conditions, right? You try to deploy sensors to read the soil moisture, or you deploy sensors to read the climatic conditions, so that when the soil moisture is low, immediately the motor can be triggered in order to water the agricultural land. Right, so sensors can be deployed wherever you want to. Even in forests, you can see in some forests, sensors have been deployed to measure the count of tigers. Okay, and that is how they say tiger population is being reduced in this forest, or this species is becoming extinct, or this species is endangered. How they do all this counting or all these measurements? By deploying sensors at appropriate locations. Say tigers move across this location, or they come to this pond for water every day. This entire forest animals come to this pond for drinking water. So if a sensor is deployed there, they can keep track of count of the animals in that forest, right? That is how sensors can be deployed everywhere they want to sense some data. They want to sense about some climatic conditions. Okay, that is also generating large volumes of data. And if properly analyzed, you can take some important decisions about that particular application. And even vehicle GPS traces in order to keep track of the logistics, in order to see how the transit of production is going to the market, how the fleet is being used, how the transportation vehicles are being used, how appropriately they are scheduled to make the product reach from the manufacturing unit to the market in appropriate time to meet the demands of the customer. All this can be kept track by using the traces of vehicle GPS. Okay, even that generates large amounts of data. And you already know about this retail transactions. When you buy something in a supermarket, when you buy something online, whenever you make a transaction, data will be generated under some transaction ID. And analyzing that data, they can understand the customer preferences, customer priorities, so that they can optimize their warehouse. They can optimize their stock in the market to meet the demands of the customer. Okay, so all these machines are generating large volumes of data, not only the humans, but all these machines are adding to existing volumes of data. Now, the data is being made available publicly, and that is being made available publicly is increasing year by year, right? When I have already given you examples of Kaggle, University of California Large Repository, or Stanford Large Repository. They are collecting large volumes of data, and they are making it available to the public as public data sets, so that the public can start downloading the data set and start analyzing it in order to understand something about that data that is captured, right? So the data that is being made publicly available is increasing year by year, and success of any organization in the future will be dictated by their ability to extract from data of other organizations in the business. Remember, of other organizations in the business, in the supply chain, in the value chain, rather than silo-based analysis. We encountered this term in the last chapter also. Silo-based analysis means analysis which is restricted to one particular department, or analysis that is restricted to one particular organization. Such silo-based analysis wouldn't help organizations any longer nowadays. Why? Because the competition in the market has increased a lot. So the organizations have to think towards optimizing their business, so that they can use lesser resources, but they can get more. They can give more production. Their production capacity have to increase at a lower investment, right? So silo-based analysis will no longer be useful for any organization. Restricted to within the organization, that analysis will no longer help any organization. They have to expand the analysis task with respect to other organizations that are in the value chain, that are in the supply chain. So if we are the education providers, then we have to come into tie-up with broadband service providers. We have to come into tie-up with other organizations or stakeholders that are involved in making this institution run. And if we are able to analyze all the data simultaneously, then we can take some important decisions to stand in the competition of the educational system. Right? So that is how the organization should not restrict their analysis within the organization, but they have to expand that to other organizations in their value chain. I don't say that completely different organization. Something like if you are in healthcare sector, you can't take some other organization in a completely different domain, but in that healthcare sector, all the pharmacists, or drug innovators, or vaccine inventors, vaccine production companies, healthcare providers like doctors, nurses, or terminal care providers, old age homes, all these can work together. All these organizations are part of the chain, value chain in the healthcare domain. So all these organizations' data, if it is analyzed properly, yes, they can take some very important decisions that can improve the healthcare delivery to the patients, right? So that is called as firewall analysis, where other organizations also can be involved in order to perform analysis in a better way. Now, even complex algorithms may not work with large amounts of data, right? And sometimes as the volumes of data keeps growing, in such cases, complex algorithms also will become obsolete at some point of time. In such cases, how to manage this growing volumes of data. Though data is liberally available now, publicly available now, challenge lies in storing and analyzing it. How efficiently you store, how effectively you analyze the data. That is very important. Now, access speeds have not increased at the same pace as the storage capacities of hard drives over the years. Right? Storage capacities of hard drives have improved a lot. Initially, when you used to get 1 GB storage capacity for 1,000 rupees, now you're getting 1 terabyte of storage capacity for 1,000 rupees, right? So the storage capacities have become cheaper. They are highly available. And but the access speeds have not increased at the same pace. What is access speed? Access speed is to read or write the data. So when a data is being read from a disk, you know that data is stored on hard disks, right? When a data has to be read from a disk, the read-write head, say this is the read-write head, having a point like this. Now this read-write head has to be placed on the appropriate track, and it has to be placed on the appropriate sector, and further it has to be placed on the appropriate fragment from where the data have to be read, or to where the data has to be written, right? That takes a lot of time. Access speeds have not increased at the same pace as the storage capacities of the hard drives. So one typical example is one typical drive from 1990, if you take, could store 1,370 megabytes of data and had a transfer speed of 4.4 megabytes per second. So you could read all the data from a full drive in around 5 minutes. So to access the data completely, to read the data completely from that kind of drive, it used to take around 5 minutes. After 20 years, over 20 years later, 1 terabyte drives are the norm. Now, it is the normal storage capacity, what we can see. But the transfer speed is around 100 megabytes per second. So it takes more than 2.5 hours to read all the data of the disk. So comparatively, if you see, initially, when we take 1,370 megabytes of data, now we are working with 1 terabyte of data. But in the olden days, again, the transfer speed was 4.4 megabytes per second, but now it has increased only up to 100 megabytes per second. So if you take the comparison in the data reading speeds, it has not increased a lot, though the storage capacities have increased. And leave about reading, writing to the disk is even slower, right? Rather than reading, if you take the operation of writing onto the disk, it has become even more slower. So the obvious way to reduce the time is to read from multiple disks at once. So what is the obvious solution here? Rather than reading from a single disk, rather than deploying a read-write head to read from a single disk, if you can partition the data onto multiple disks, so that you can provide access to all those multiple disks simultaneously, right? This is like divide the data and provide access to it simultaneously so that the data can be read faster. Okay, so multiple access is being provided to the data so that simultaneously the data can be read very quickly when compared to reading from a single disk. Okay, so imagine if we have 100 drives, each holding 1/100th of the data, right? Each holding 1/100th of the data, working in parallel, allowing the access to those disks in parallel simultaneously. We could read the data in around 2 minutes. Okay, before it was 5 minutes, or it was, if it is more data, you have seen it is 2.5 hours that used to take. Now we can read that in 2 minutes itself by dividing the data onto multiple disks and providing access to them parallel. Now using only 1/100th of a disk may seem wasteful. Again, another bottleneck. What is not bottleneck exactly? It is an issue, right? Because this has, say, 100 GB capacity, but we are storing only 1 GB. Means you are using only 1/100th part of the disk. What about the remaining disk? Is it to be wasted? No. We can store 100 such data sets, each of which is 1 terabyte, and provide shared access to them. That is the solution. That is feasible and appropriate solution also. Rather than storing one piece out of 100 pieces, you are storing 100 of 100 such pieces. So the entire disk space can be utilized. You understood what I'm trying to explain here? When you are dividing one piece of data into, one data into 100 pieces and storing on 100 different disks, rest of the disk space need not be wasted. Now you may have many such data sets. Divide again those data sets into 100 parts and store on all these disks and provide simultaneous access. That is how you can speed up the access as well as you can use the disk space completely without wasting any of the disk space, right? So what are the problems encountered during storage and analysis of data? Yes, now what we are doing is the data that can be stored on one single disk, we are trying to now partition it onto multiple disks and store the data to provide simultaneous access. In such cases, probability of hardware failure will be more. Probability of hardware failure increases, right? So what is the probability of hardware failure? If you use 2-3 disks, or if you use 100 disks, as you go on increasing the number of disks, the hardware failure probability also increases, right? And even the data loss. Say if one one hard disk is corrupted, in such case, copies stored on that data can be lost, or multiple copies of other data also stored on the data can be lost if there is a disk failure. In such cases, we use replication. Replication is a solution for data loss. Replication means storing multiple copies of same data using a mechanism called as RAID. RAID is redundant array of independent or inexpensive, we can also say inexpensive disks. Okay, so using this redundant array of inexpensive disks, you can try to mirror the data. Mirror the data means store a copy of the data so that the replication factor can be decided as 3. If the replication factor is 3, you can store 3 copies of the data. But for data critical applications, you can increase this replication factor to 4 or 5, where 5 copies of the data will be stored on different disks, so that even one disk fails, the other disk will be available to provide that same copy of the data. Also, HDFS will help us to encounter this data loss, face this data loss, fight with this data loss. HDFS, that is Hadoop Distributed File System, also has some inbuilt mechanism in order to deal with this data loss. And also the fragmented data problem, because you are dividing the data onto multiple disks. We say that the data is being fragmented. Fragmented means divided into pieces. Okay, now when the data is being divided into parts and being hosted on various disks, again, whenever the requirement arises, all this data have to be consolidated back into its original form, right? So that kind of problem also may arise due to fragmented data, and MapReduce in Hadoop has built-in reliability in order to deal with such problems that may arise because of fragmentation. MapReduce will take appropriate actions to map the data onto further divided storage onto multiple disks and again consolidate it back to its original form. MapReduce is capable of doing this, mapping onto various disks to store the parts of data and again taking back in order to make it available in the original form, right? So overall, what we can understand is Hadoop provides a reliable, shared storage and analysis system. Okay, Hadoop provides reliable. Why reliable? Because hardware failures can be efficiently handled, data losses can be efficiently handled, and how it can provide shared access by dividing the data onto multiple disks and allowing simultaneous access to the data. It provides shared access and stores the data efficiently and provides effective analysis, efficient analysis of the data. Now let us compare this HDFS and MapReduce with other systems so that we'll understand why this has gained so much prominence in the market when compared to other systems that are already existing. The MapReduce, as we know, is a batch query processor. You can give the queries as a batch which can be executed all together and the comprehensive results can be obtained. Questions that took too long to be answered before can now be answered, which in turn leads to new questions and insights. So far, we haven't got that kind of queries into our mind. We would have thought that they would be ridiculous for a traditional database system to be answered, but still that kind of questions can now be posed to this MapReduce, which can efficiently be answered, which in turn leads to new questions and insights into the data, insights into the customers, insights into the client's behavior, their purchasing behavior, their transaction behavior, their spending behavior. Everything can be analyzed very efficiently using the framework of MapReduce. One example we can quote here is about Mail Trust, which is Rackspace's mail division, something like our Gmail. Okay, so this Rackspace's mail division used Hadoop for processing the email logs. So what exactly they try to find is what is the distribution of their clients across the globe, so that they can see where the intensity of the clients are more, in which geographical location the intensity of the clients are more, so that they can set up more servers in that location. They can increase the processing capacity in that location so that they can serve the requirements of the clients more better. Okay, so one ad hoc query they wrote was to find the geographic distribution of their users. That is what I said. They tried to understand the geographic distribution of their mail users, and they improved the service of their customers. They understood the intensity of the customers in the geographic locations, and accordingly they have deployed more servers if the customer intensity is more, and they reduce the capacity if the customer intensity is less, and harness that capacity elsewhere where there is more demand. That is how they optimize their operations and met the services and met the requirements of their customers and improved their services to the customers. Now let us compare RDBMS and MapReduce. Now we have been using databases for long, right? But why can't we use databases now? Why is MapReduce required? Why can't we use traditional RDBMS systems itself? Why we have to go for MapReduce? Why is it required? That is how we need to think, right? Whenever some new technology is being introduced into the market, we should understand what are the drawbacks of the existing technology, and are they not able to meet those requirements, and how the new technology came into picture in order to meet the expectations of the people or expectations of the market. That is how we need to understand about a new technology. The seed time is improving more slowly than transfer rate. That is what we have been discussing in today's class, right? The seed time is improving more slowly. Read-write capacity, read-write speed is very slow. It is slowly improving when compared to the transfer rate. It characterizes the latency of a disk operation, whereas the transfer rate corresponds to a disk's bandwidth. Right? What is latency? The time, the duration between which you gave the request and your request is served. Okay, the duration from where you have given your input to where you are served with the output. You are requesting for some data and you are provided with the data. The duration between that is called as latency of an operation, latency of a disk operation. So the seed time corresponds to latency in the disk operation. This latency, this duration have to shrink, it have to reduce. Okay, the access speeds have to be faster. Access speeds have to increase, whereas the transfer rate corresponds to what? Disk's bandwidth. If the bandwidth is high, transfer rates can be faster. More, transfer rates can be more. But if the disk bandwidth is lesser, then the transfer rates will be lower. Okay, so the data access patterns is dominated by seeks. So whenever the data has to be accessed, it is dominated by seeks. The read-write head has to seek the appropriate track and sector and appropriate fragment to seek the information, or to read the information, or to write the information. Okay, so the data access pattern is dominated by seeks here, and it will take longer to read or write large portions of the data set than streaming through it, which operates at the transfer rate. So when we take the transfer rate, it is dominated by the time taken to read the data or write the data to the disk. Now, if we take a traditional B tree, it works well only for updating small proportions of records in a database, right? When you take the traditional RDBMS, if you want to write small proportions of records into the database, then we are okay, fine with RDBMS. But MapReduce uses sort or merge to rebuild the entire database. Now, if you want to work with large volumes of data, if you want to work with quicker batch processing, in such cases, RDBMS will become obsolete. They can't meet the requirements of the customers when they are analyzing large volumes of data. In such cases, MapReduce will come to our rescue. Now, this is a consolidated comparison between RDBMS and MapReduce. When we take with respect to data size, RDBMS can store up to gigabytes of data, but MapReduce can work with even petabytes of data, even larger volumes of data. When we take data access, traditional RDBMS are interactive. If you pose a query to the RDBMS system, it will give you the answer. It will provide you the results. So RDBMS is interactive. It provides interactive access as well as batch access also. RDBMS can provide batch access also, but they normally entertain only point queries or any quick updations, any immediate updations if you want, any point to point queries. If you any point queries if you want to post to the to RDBMS, it can be entertained by traditional systems. But MapReduce works with only batch queries, where we are not interested in point queries, where you don't want too many updations to be done, but you want a quicker analysis. In such cases, MapReduce will serve the purpose by using batch processing, batch analysis of the data, batch processing of the data. Then what about updates? Updates made to the data. Traditional RDBMS can be useful in scenarios where you read and write data many times. If you want to read the data many times, or if you want to make updations to the database many times, in such cases, you can go for traditional RDBMS. But if you want, always remember the main idea to adopt MapReduce framework is for faster data analysis. Now, under that scenario, if you want to write once but read the data many times, that too in a very fast, that too if you want to read the data faster, in that case, you can go for MapReduce framework. And what is the structure of the data it supports? Traditional RDBMS supports only static schema. In the form of rows and columns, you can store the data. But MapReduce framework supports even dynamic schema. Dynamic schema means unstructured data also. If you want to analyze video data, audio data, image data, such kind of data can be stored efficiently and analyzed effectively by MapReduce, which is not possible using traditional RDBMS. And what about integrity of the data? Integrity that is provided by traditional RDBMS is very high. It takes care of integrity of the data by using normalization, right? Normalization by using foreign keys. The consistency in the data is preserved, right? Duplication of the data is reduced. Normalization will help to reduce duplication in the data. But replication is the basic idea of MapReduce. In order to serve for data losses, when the data loss occurs, then a copy of the data should be available in order to serve the purpose of the clients. In such cases, replication is the main factor. Data duplication is required in such cases where the data is very important for the business. In such cases, MapReduce framework can be used. Traditional RDBMS use normalization and foreign keys in order to preserve the integrity of the data, but MapReduce uses replication. That is why the integrity of the data is low, but the data availability is very high. The data is available without any interruptions. Data losses can be tackled without any issues by MapReduce, though the integrity is low. Okay, so what about scaling? Traditional RDBMS cannot be scaled linearly. When the volumes of data keep increasing, the capacity of RDBMS can't increase linearly. So the scaling up is non-linear. You have to spend a lot. Scaling up will be very expensive with traditional RDBMS. But with MapReduce, the scaling is linear. Linear means as the capacity, as the volumes of data keeps increasing, even the capacity also can be increased at the same pace, can be increased at the same extent. When the volume of data increases, at the same time you can also increase the capacity, processing capacity of your platform at the same pace in a linear fashion. Okay, so it has been very inexpensive using the commodity hardware in order to scale up using Hadoop platform under the MapReduce framework. So over time, the differences between relational databases and MapReduce systems are likely to blur. Now, because before we used to say big data, because volumes of data kept increasing, we kept calling big data analysis. But now there is almost the mark between data and big data have been erased completely because of improvements in the technologies to handle large volumes of data. Over the time, the differences between this relational RDBMS and the MapReduce systems are completely blurring. There is no difference. Now, RDBMS can do as much as MapReduce can do, or MapReduce can also have the traditional properties of a relational database system. So the demarcation has been becoming blurred between traditional systems and the newer technologies. The relational databases start incorporating some of the ideas from MapReduce. Yes, they're taking the ideas of MapReduce, and from the other direction, on the other hand, as higher level query languages built on MapReduce, some projects like Pig and Hive, they try to make this Hadoop work with higher level query languages. Using this Pig and Hive, we can write our own scripts, we can write our own queries, like we do with RDBMS systems, even by using Hadoop platforms. Okay, so on the other hand, as higher level query languages are built on this MapReduce by using tools like Pig and Hive, it made MapReduce systems more approachable for traditional database programmers. Now, traditional database programmers may not feel that their technology has become obsolete. Even MapReduce is providing the same tools to provide them an experience that they are working still with the traditional RDBMS. Okay, so it is overall, it tends to say that the mark between the difference, the gap between RDBMS and MapReduce have narrowed down eventually as the time went on and as new technologies came into picture. And the next coming class, we are going to cover on grid computing, volunteer computing. These are the very two interesting topics. How distributed computing can be handled by using grid computing, and how people across the world can volunteer their processing cycles, that can volunteer their processing speeds of their computers when their computers are idle in order to analyze some extraterrestrial data. Okay, that we are going to see in next class, along with a brief history of Hadoop. Okay, any doubts, students, still here? Okay, case studies have been sent to your mail. So the first two case studies you have to go through by clicking on the appropriate links. Go through the cases and see how big data analysis can be used with various companies in order to stay ahead in the market, right? Among that, one question will be, on one case study, question will be given in your exam. An innovative case study will be on your, innovative question will be on your first chapters, data analysis and pre-processing. Okay, data pre-processing and analysis steps. On that, one question will be given for innovative question. Any doubts? First 2 chapters you will have for your first internal exam. Okay, then I'll end the recording and I'll take the attendance. Stay back.